grateful to be here. I'm Andre Jimenez, Chair of the Human Rights Commission and part of IBJ. I was just talking with Tia right before we started. I don't know if I've ever seen a panel of all Black men. I don't think that's ever happened, especially not Proctor. So we're really excited. As I was preparing for tonight, I was thinking about that phrase, nothing about us without us, right? And so, we talk a lot in this community about gun violence, and, we often don't hear from the people who are most affected. So I'm really excited. So let's jump right in. And so I'm going to ask a question, but before you start, if you guys can introduce yourself before you answer the question, your name, where you work, businesses you own, or communities that you serve. All right, so this first one, pretty open-ended. Tell us how you were first introduced to guns, and really set the scene for us and kind of paint that picture for the audience. Brendan?
How you guys doing? My name is Brendan. I'm co-owner of ED Private Protection. We do a lot of security events for the community, as well. We did it for we provide protection for the mayor and private events. So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, tell us how you were first introduced to guns.
So when I was first introduced to guns, my family's military. I've been around guns for a while, and my father was Special Forces. My mom she's actually here. She's infantry. My brothers was Navy. So I always been around guns and knowing how to use it and getting a good education on it.
Keandre? Yeah. Well, I'm Keandre, I'm 15. I don't own any businesses or any of that other special stuff like that. And,
Not yet. Not yet.
what was the question again?
Yeah, for sure. Tell us how you were first introduced to guns.
Guns. I would say I was about third grade, like 10 years old, I think. And we would just me, my cousins, my sisters, we would run around our neighborhood and do BB gunfights and stuff like that in the woods. So yeah, that was my introduction to guns.
How you guys doing?
All right.
My name is Brett Brown, and I'm the executive director of an organization called Young Businessmen of Washington. A few of my business partners is in the building today too, so I appreciate that. Right. My first introduction to guns, I would say the first time I was introduced to guns was 5 years old. My mother was a single woman, raising 4 kids. We lived in some hostile environments like East St. Louis in the 80s. And well, actually younger than that, in Manny, Louisiana, I was 5 years old and got introduced to a .44 Magnum. And when I was 8 years old, I got introduced to a 12-gauge sawed-off shotgun. And then at the age of 10 to 11, I was searching through my mother's closet and I came across a crap load of hand pistols, which my mother used to hold guns for her friends who was also in the military in Fort Polk, Louisiana. And, I got a chance to see what guns were. Never really got a chance to see what they would do, but that was my first introduction to pistols.
My name is Tremaine Edwards. New in the state of Washington. I work for the organization, the Alliance for Gun Responsibility, which is a statewide organization here in the state of Washington. First time I ever encountered a gun, I would also say I was 5 years old. I'm from Virginia, from the Commonwealth of Virginia, and I guess you're creative to say my father, in his spare time, was a producer of some things in the kitchen, to keep it PC. And during that time in particular, as a 5-year-old, I was alone, and I went into the bathroom, searching around, and in a cupboard kind of area near their hot tub was a handgun. And so at 5 years old, with nobody to really watch what I was doing, I remember picking up the gun, holding it in my hand. Every time I tell the story, I get goosebumps because I can literally feel the weight of it. Holding it in my hand, knowing what I was doing was wrong, but also being very curious of what it was. And thankfully to this day, I never really pursued the extra step of trying to see what would happen if I pulled the trigger. And out of that kind of got fearful just because I knew that I wasn't supposed to be in there and I might get in trouble with my parents. So that was the first time I ever encountered a gun at a young age. And later in elementary school, there was an altercation at my aunt's house outside of the home with some relatives, and one of them shot at his father, who had been kind of grazed on the forehead. So at a young age, watching them come into the house and watching the blood and kind of the whole experience of that, hearing a gun that shot for the first time at a young age, ducking to the ground with my cousin, not knowing what was about to happen, and then last year losing my cousin, losing her significant other to someone in a conflict, killing her significant other. So that was the most recent indirect as well, but the first time I was able to be 5.
And I think it's interesting that all of you guys were younger than 10 the first time you held a gun or saw it in your house. Yeah, and all of you guys were introduced by a close family member, friend, cousin. So that family structure is really important as well. We'll hear about that in the film. But kind of drawing from a statement made in the film, Mary, the community anti-racist organizer we heard from a few times, says, "This country is based on fear. When you have a country that is based on that, or has grown out of colonization and slavery, people do not rest easy." Does the statement resonate with you? Why or why not? Fred?
The whole fear factor, I believe that it does play a key part. As far as personality and characteristics, I believe that that's a persona that everybody will want to take on. To feel like you want to survive for the most part, if I'm answering the question accordingly. America produces this fear factor onto people to keep control. So it's only right that I feel like people feel like they're supposed to implement the same perspective in order to gain control over those that are around them in the communities, and just fellowshipping with people. I wouldn't look past that. I mean, there's a lot of extra elements that goes along with it, but perpetuating that fact of fear, it gives you that sense of hierarchy, or it gives you that sense of, like the one brother said, you know, busting the pistol gave him a sense of fearlessness. And that does produce that image of yourself that people would reflect onto. And, you know, I guess, I mean, I don't know. I mean, the question is a deep question. And so, but to answer it simply, yeah, I believe that America portrayed that image. And so it's only right for us to be as powerful as America is in its sense that we have to become the same characteristics of personality. And so that trickles down to young people, but more so for the adults that understand that when we grow, we should some degree grow out of that. But a lot of times we don't, for whatever reasons it may be, we don't grow out of that mindset. And so we project that same mindset into those that comes after us. So yeah, I would say that it resonates a lot.
Yeah, and I think language is important too. You know, we saw Hillary Clinton, who was first lady at the time, use the term super predator, right? And you know, you create that fear and those images in people's minds. I wonder from Brendan, as an owner of a private security firm, how does that statement resonate with you? That this country was born out of fear.
Well, owning a private security company, I see a lot of things. I got stories for days. Just the fear, just it runs deep. One incident I had dealt with, I actually held a girl in my arms. It was a private event, and you have to think it was laughter. People was laughing, talking, and then next thing you know, it was straight terror. It was called New World. I'm pretty sure you guys heard about it on the news. I held this girl, and I'm seeing like bullet holes down her spine, and just thinking about it, and just the straight terror, not knowing if anybody's gonna survive. I believe one person had died that night, and he came there just to pick up his girlfriend from work. Just imagine that. Just not knowing if you're gonna be able to get home. And to this day, this girl is alive. And it still runs through my mind at times, every now and then. But for those first 2 weeks, I couldn't get it out of my head. So I knew I had to do something. Me and my business partner knew we had to do something, or at least try to do something. So yes, the fear, it does run deep.
Yeah, so as we talked earlier, deep in legislative session, which I cannot wait for it to be over. Right, but we are in the legislature right now pushing for good laws, civil laws, right? Civil versus criminal. But a lot of time, those who are against us, right, they use fear. And the way that they sometimes message, right, the need to have that gun, the need to protect themselves, right? It's very thinly veiled messaging of who they want to protect themselves from, right? Without saying it, but they say it. So fear is always in America, especially when you think about American politics. Everything that we do is so fear-based. And so when we also talk about gun violence prevention at our organization, we also try to counter that with, we realize that they're running on fear, and that's right how they control their narrative, right? But we combat that with safety, right? What is the opposite of that fear is safety. But I most certainly, I've seen that a lot, whether it's GOTV or it's legislative session, when you see this messaging that's happening, they are messaging and galvanizing their bases based off of fear, right? And fear of those other communities that they need to protect themselves from, or the American government, which I always find laughable that you think you could take down this entire monstrosity of a system. Right, but it is fear-based. That is how they get to go as far as they continue to try to go, is playing on people's fear. And then once you've got that, right, you've got that control and that narrative, and everybody pushes that narrative. So it most certainly runs deep in this country, arguably since the very inception, right? The fear allows those who are, right, the oppressor as well, to continue to do that, to hold that narrative, to hold those who believe into that narrative, so that they don't actually have to do the opposite.
Yeah, no, that's one question that I constantly ask when we, hear these, conversations about reimagining public safety. Who do we want to keep safe, right? Who are we protecting them from, right? Those are the questions that we need to be asking. And I want to go back to you, Threat. You talked about, you referenced a moment in the film where the young man was talking about when he pulled that trigger, he felt fearless. What is that feeling like? What are they searching for? And how do guns fill that void?
Well, I would say personally, from my personal experience, me growing up, and like I say, people will look at me now today and be like, oh, okay, that's Threat. But they fail to realize that there was a part of myself that I was running from as a young person growing up. And nothing against people and their perspectives on their views of how they've grown their life. But I grew up raised around my mother and 3 sisters, right? And so I had qualities about myself as a young boy that I didn't resonate with when I seen other young boys playing in the community, right? I was a little more sensitive, I was a little more timid, and so when I viewed how young men operate in community, I felt disconnected from local boys and stuff, you feel what I'm saying? And so a lot of feminine qualities is things that I had, and so this is identities that I recognize with. And so I told myself that what can I do to stand out or not to be viewed as somebody that was sensitive or feminine for the most part, And so me projecting and putting myself out there in community, I wanted to be acknowledged more so as a tougher person, And so how do I do that? I got good hands. So if it's either slap boxing, that's cool. I slap box or pay pipe with the rest of them. But that wasn't enough when I seen that most of my homeboys were allegedly killers, A lot of my people that I looked at to was extreme shooters. And so my first time at 15, now I played with pistols before, but my first time really busting a strap was a .357 at 15 years old. And when I shot the pistol, it channels. It's a lot of powerful energy that comes from a hand pistol. And if you don't understand the culture, the lifestyle, then a person would know. That's like me trying to explain somebody who's never been addicted to heroin or who's never been addicted to crack cocaine. If you don't understand that addiction, then it's going to be hard for you to understand why people do and how people feel the way that they do about circumstances. This culture in itself is an addiction. It's no different than any other alcoholism, anything, So when I bust a pistol for the first time and the smell of gunpowder, and then the sound, that whole embodiment of everything, it changed the trajectory of my perspective. So that made me feel more powerful. And to feel power from a pistol go through your hand, that channels from your hand, through your arms, into your heart, the adrenaline. And then when you know what this thing is capable of doing to people, like shooting a window or shooting the block of a tree, when you see that stuff bust patches out of a tree, you can only imagine. Now I want to know what it's like to hit somebody with it. And then you got friends that have done these things to people. Like we was talking briefly in our Zoom, that if you take a young person to the morgue and show them what a hand pistol would do to somebody's head, but people fail to realize that there's some people out here that get turned on by what a hand pistol would do to busting a hole in somebody's head. Just the whole conversation about knocking a patch out your head, that sounds so intriguing to a lot of young people who don't have, who have a lack of guidance or don't have no true structure. And if you can't guide somebody through that perspective or that process of everything, then they just go deeper and deeper into it, you know. So that's powerful. You know, when you're nobody or you feel like you're nobody, and when you feel like you're alone and you feel like sometimes you're being picked on or nobody's acknowledging you for the most part, simply shooting a gun makes you feel powerful. But then when you add alcohol and you add cocaine at 15, 16 years old, these is kids that we talking about 13, 14, 15 years old snorting cocaine and just being adrenalated off just the drugs in itself and, you know, the extra stuff, bullets whizzing by your head and stuff. All these things are addictions and triggers that just make you feel invincible. And when your older homeboys act differently around you when you show up and they look at you like, little homie, you'll probably do something stupid, so I'm gonna stay away from him. So then a younger person will start to look at their older homeboys like, you're square now that I see that you're more afraid of me as a kid with a pistol. That just sends a different channel of a person, you know, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and you talked about kind of the relationship between the older men and the younger men. And so I'd love to hear from Keandre. What is your perception of like older men, or what examples do you have of good or bad issues around gun violence? What's been your experience with people that are older than you?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Yeah, for sure. So what's been the experience of people that are older than you, like that you look up to or that you're around in your family, your friends, etc.?
Okay, can you repeat it one more time?
Of course, yeah. So what are you seeing from like the older generation that's maybe different from the younger generation, or like just what are you seeing?
I mean, I feel like the younger generation, my generation, is like somewhat trying to prove themselves to the older generation just to like fit in or like, you know, have friends like you said. You know, some kids grew up around all girls and, you know, just have that like kind of feminine, you know, like girly kind of, you know, attitude. So it's like hanging around older guys and, you know, you kind of like just want to be like them. You know, you want to fit in. So obviously the older guys are out here doing drugs, shooting, whatever, etc. You see the younger guys, and the younger guys want to be like them. Especially me, I definitely wanted to be like the older guys. Seeing them partying with the girls, you know, the drugs, the money, the cars, whatever, etc. You know, I definitely wanted to be like them. So yeah.
Yeah, and you know, Monty said something very similar in the film. He talked about trying to prove worth, right?
Yeah.
In a society that tells us that we don't have worth or devalues, dehumanizes us, it's very easy to fall into that trap, like you said, of looking up to people that are older than you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I add to that, which feels funny now that I am an older generation. Still hurts every time. Right, but I think there's also this piece of those that are younger. The exposure to what they see is also different, right? Even us, right, growing up as a millennial, we kind of grew up with technology, so we still didn't have access to what they kind of see, right? You have your Snapchat and your Instagram and your Facebook, and you're seeing all these different things, right? You're seeing people glorify, right, guns, gun violence, drugs, what have you, that lifestyle. And so there's also this additional piece of like, right, what he's seeing, right, and kind of wanting to be a part of that, right? There's a whole other level now to what they see versus had dial-up. So it took a whole battle to just get to the internet, and now everybody has phones, right? So you have phones and you have so much access to anything and everything that we didn't have. And I wanted to add that too, right? As the generations change, as technology changes, there's also this piece of, as parents and adults and villages, trying to keep up to what they are exposed to, because it's harder to do it now than as our parents would do.
Accessing that, you know, that culture and those ideas is so much faster, it's so much easier now than it was, you know, I don't want to age myself, but I can argue, right? Like you said, we grew up with technology, right? We had to go out to see things, and and now someone can sit at home and see it, see 10 times as much, 10 times as fast. And so we've got to take that into account when we're thinking about solutions as well. Yeah, but to keep us moving along, Brendan, let me ask you this question. So we just touched on it right before the film ended, and if you haven't seen the rest of the film, I highly recommend it. But the mission of the Black Prisoners Caucus and TEACH is to, quote, create a better version of who we are. What significance do you think this has in your life and in your community?
I grew up on 7th and Sheridan, and I seen a lot of things. And I seen a lot of my friends in prison and die too, just like they were saying on there. It made a huge impact. And the one thing I kept telling myself when I was growing up, I didn't want to be like them. I want to be something different. So, making sure that, I was blessed to have two parents and, two parents household, which a lot of people did growing up. And I was blessed. They made sure I was in church. I was at the drill team. I was in choir rehearsal. They made sure that it made such an impact in my life that it didn't fall into that crack. And then coming to realize then I started noticing that I can make a difference on what I do and making sure I was a better version of myself. And, just by the way I wear or how I carry myself or, who I'm speaking to. Yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. It really changed everything about me. And so I made sure that I kept that with me, and my parents made sure they made a difference in my life. So.
Ask me that question one more time.
Yeah, of course. So the mission of the Black Prisoners Caucus and TEACH is to, quote, create a better version of who we are. So what significance do you think this has in your life and in your community?
Right, I think adding on to what he said, and even in the video, right, I think there was an important piece of outcomes and versus right, kind of that investment piece. And I think I'd even add more to what was just said there, right, what his family, right, offered in terms of stability and different engagement opportunities, that it's important, right, whether that's education, whether that's after school programs, et cetera, the different resources, and even in prison, right, it's important that the criminal justice system sucks. And, right, because there is no true rehabilitative way of going about it. And so I think that it is important, right, that if we have a vision for this system and it's not doing it, that we need to do something about it. And I think it's important that caucus is started, right? I work with organizers, and that to me, watching that clip was also about, right, organizers. Organizing, the impact of organizing, what that collective voice does to make change. And I think that's also really important, but right, education is that kind of fundamental thing, right? I grew up and my parents died at an early age, and my father is incarcerated, right? I was raised by a single mother. So then there's already all these different factors against me growing up in a small little backwoods area of Virginia, right? There's already enough things going against, right? But there was that one piece of, right, TEACH, if you will, right? Of my mother telling me, what you see every day is not what you have to live to be. I want you to have more than me. I want you to be better than me. And she went through 4 jobs just to put me in college, right? So there's the importance of education and those resources so that you have your alternatives, so that you can go and aspire for what you want. And I think that TEACH, the principle of TEACH as a whole, right, is resources, education, the importance of allocating resources in the proper way, right, investments, and then you'll get different outcomes in your communities. Okay.
Yeah, thank you. And that just got me thinking about what late Harold Moss was saying about those inputs and outputs. Red, can you talk a little bit about when you were younger, what the input output looked like? Was there investments in education? Did you feel like, school was a place for you? Healthcare, all these systems that we need to produce those good outcomes. What was your assessment?
Well, originally I'm from a place called Pleasant Hill, Louisiana. Our population is about 700 people to this day, right? So at heart, I'm a country kid. I'm not a city dude. I'm not, I was just raised out here, so the whole fast lane, and this is even new fast, Tacoma's not a fast-paced city. you know, in comparisons to real fast-paced cities like the LAs. That's why it was so easy to turn Tacoma into what it became because of the outsourced influences from people. Tacoma's, you know, this is apprenticeship, this is iron workers, this is, you know, factory workers, you know, this is union work, you know, cybersecurity, technology. You know, that's what this element is about. That's the frequency of Washington State, from my perspective to view things, right? And so me growing up in a small town, you know, I'm very prone to racism and jumping in dishes when folks come driving through with the Klan masks and things on, putting bullheads in the middle of school football games and burning crosses. So I'm familiar with all of that. And so me looking at school, I think this school thing is important. Now I promote education, but my primary focus now for the younger generation is critical education. I don't really push advanced education on a lot of young adults or young people because, you know, getting them to understand the importance of high school is a task in itself. So helping them understand that critical education is important, and if you could navigate through the processes of completing high school, then you can condition and fundamentally push yourself through social life, right? School will teach you how to live a decent life. Your school attendance would determine your consistency to go to work or punch the clock. If you constantly skipping school, you wonder why you constantly skipping a job or you're not showing up at work, you know, adamantly, right? So me, I dropped out of school in the 8th grade, you know, and the reason why I dropped out of school in the 8th grade is because I came across a social studies book in the 3rd grade that had my auntie's name in the book. And I was like, what the heck is this? I was like, so life isn't changing. I'm just being processed through the same cycle that everybody else has been processed through. So I got the same mentality that my elders have. So there's no change in that. You're just trying to condition me to be just like everybody else. And so me rebelling from school and me dropping out in the 8th grade. And then I moved to Washington and was put into the 9th grade as a senior. And I found that my life was at more risk at school than it was running the streets. And so there was no resources. I never paid attention to the resources. I never knew that there was a real opportunity outside of me socializing with people that was trying to figure it out themselves. I was searching for masculinity and came across toxic masculinity, and I couldn't determine the difference in either one of them until I was incarcerated and got my GED in Column Bay in 2001. And then I realized the importance of education, and then I realized the more keen sense of higher education or advanced education, because what they teach us in school, we completely wash out as soon as you get to college, and they tell you that. And so that's why it's hard for me to look at a younger generation and say, you know, school is going to work for you. I encourage self-research. I encourage you to figure out what you want to do with yourself in life and pursue the knowledge on that. And by me joining TCC, shout out to TCC. I did TCC for like 3 years, you know, and I've learned a lot from the colleges, the college professors, and I learned a lot because I want to know more about what it is out here. And by me doing that, now I have more of a fertile ground to say to young people, you should pursue some sense of college because you're able to learn more, because I can identify with a lot of people in the community that said to hell with school, and a lot of young kids that's like, I refuse to go to school, bro, I drop out. But that's why I lean on my young brothers and stuff like Malik Banks and Keyshawn Banks, you know, that's in it today. I lean on them because they have more connected relationships to the younger generation, and they completed high school with diplomas. But they're no different than their peers when it comes to gang culture. You know, I'm long-winded, but I'm gonna wrap it up. So I still to this day don't find a significant importance in school other than doing it because it keeps you out of trouble. Doing it and it teaches you the structural fundamentals to live life. Doing it because it shows a sense of discipline in the complexities of life. Life is an awkward place to be in. And if you can house yourself at school, then you'll be able to tolerate life a lot more as you grow up. And then the relationships that you can develop in school, it gives you a sense of how to stay away from negative bullshit at the end of the day. You find your bearings and you hold your 2 feet at school. Because if you're a young brother like so, you know what I'm saying? And not to be putting you on blast, my guy. But as a young brother, you know what I'm saying, I learned early on that if I'm willing to die for people that I don't know if they would die for me or not, then I'm willing to die for myself. So I'm going to do what is important for me. I'm going to find out what my traits and my things that I love to do, and I'm going to pursue that. And I guarantee you that when younger people start to focus on what they want to do, then you can find the people that can help walk you through those processes. And you got your art, you know, so kill it right there.
Amazing. Talking about structures, I want to hear from Tremaine on this one. So another long-winded fish. They get shorter, I promise. So pundits are quick to talk about the misnomer, black on black crime. when discussing gun violence. But we know that Pierce County data reveals that young black men ages 0 to 17 are 13 times more likely to experience excessive or deadly force by police. How do we both protect our communities and reduce gun violence simultaneously?
Put in the work. Okay, all right. First, right, myself, organization, right, we often try to myth bust, right, the black on black crime, right, myth, right? That happens, why, right? Because we are, right, red line, we're put into these communities, when you put us into these small spaces and that's it, what's gonna happen, right? I used to hear all the time, right, that crabs in the barrel mentality. I love to question everything, right? So it's like, okay, well, who put us in the barrel, right? So if you put X amount of people in one area and then you take all the different resources and opportunities out, right? That's what's happening, right? But there's no black on black crime as they stated, right? And then there's also the piece of the conversation that is police gun violence, right? And because police are going through these neighborhoods more than any other neighborhood, well, of course, you're gonna see X, Y, and Z. Why don't you go through the other neighborhoods and I'm sure you'll find X, Y, and Z just as well, right? But then we also watch what, right, legislation allows these people in power to do who are set to protect and serve, but they're only protecting and serving one group of people, one set of a neighborhood. So there's also that piece too. I live in this realm of dismantling as well. A lot of these systems that are in place because we can continue to talk about reform, but I'm also sometimes a little boisterous of the world of, you can put the lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig. So let's go ahead and get rid of the pig, get out of the way, trying to be PC for work. Slaughter the pig, get the pig out of the way, not as a euphemism for police, but right, as an analogy for really having to do some good work. But I think that definitely, right, that is a myth, and we know that it's a myth, and those who want to just do a simple Google search and see that it is a myth, it is there, right? But it's an easy narrative. It's an easy way to constantly, those that are already oppressed, to continue to make them seem like they are the problem, and they're not the problem. They are literally a product of their environments, the environments that they were forced to be in, the environments that they have to muddle through every single day. But when it needs to be focused on, right, looking very much on that screen to what law enforcement is doing in these communities every day, or saying that they are doing in these communities. And I think that is all just right. Again, if we're talking about fear in America and politics and the nature of the narrative and the messaging, we've allowed that to happen for so long. So that's what people have believed for so long. It is a narrative, it is a myth, and we've just allowed it to go on this long because nobody needed to question it for so long. Until now.
Yeah, and I picked up when the two police officers were sitting in that car flipping through that book, and it was just page after page after page. And so it's, you can see how they create these narratives for themselves to justify their actions. But Brendan, I want to hear your perspective. How do we protect our communities from the police and reduce gun violence at the same time?
I grew up in a time where there was a lot of after-school activities. You had late night playing at the YMCA, a lot of outreach that was going throughout the community. I think that's the biggest thing that our next step for the community is bring back the outreach, bring back the late night, so kids have something to do. And that will bring down the gun violence between the youth. And that's the main focus. I think, honestly, the next step we have to do. We have to go out to the activists. We have to go to the churches, go back to the YMCA, bring everything back when we had it in the 90s and the late 90s. And during that time, we understand that we didn't have kids dying in the streets. It was playing basketball. It was being kids. It was being youth. It was enjoying themselves. So I think that's the first step that we need to do.
So, Brad, did you have anything you want to add?
I think my trajectory is a little, that's where we found drama in the Boy Scouts. Honestly, I'm keeping it 100. We know you know, and that's just me, you know, like people have different experiences. We can look at the glass in one way and we both view it in a different perspective, right? So I knew that if we wanted to find people, we'll go to the local YMCA. You know, we hide pistols up under the cars and stuff them in paper bags in the bushes, and we wait for so-and-so them to come out, and when they pull out and they rise, we finna block them off up the street over at the old A office, Silicon Boulevard, by the old mattress shop, you know what I'm saying? And we trying to block them off and get busy there. I never seen safe havens and spaces unless we created that environment. You know, one of the biggest things that I feel would be beneficial to the community right now is how do we take the persona that this generation would perceive as this is what we're supposed to be doing, because this era of young brothers believe that we're supposed to say this is an op, that's an op, and that's an op. That's what we was taught, and that's why we look at everybody from Lakewood, from Hilltop, from the East Side, from YGC. We looked at everybody as an op until we got older. We looked at everybody as an op until I was sitting in prison with some of these same people. And now that I'm sitting in Column Bay with somebody that I was banging with, now I'm realizing that we all trying to get out of prison. I got a luxury to get out because only doing 4 years, but I'm sitting up here conversing and communicating with people that was considered to be my rivals that's got, you know, football members, you know. And so they'll never see the day of light again on this side of the spectrum. And so these same people was the type of people that was encouraging me, Threat, when you get out, bro, do your best to make differences. And that's one of the biggest reasons on why I stay focused on the straight and narrow. I'm still myself, you know. I'm still aggressive. That'll never change. Like it says, that better version of myself. I'm going to always be aggressive. I'm going to always be extreme. Those are protective factors to my community. Those are protective factors to my family. Those are things that I need to be able to transition into when it comes to protecting my family from police. I don't encourage violence on any level. I just look at it from a standpoint now to where if I see that people are killing my people at will and at random for free charge, my personality of what I would have done to my own people in the streets, I have to some kind of way formulate that into a perspective of being a soldier for my people. Being a soldier for the younger generation and teaching them the perspectives of how to rightfully do things. Like when we was talking in our Zoom meeting, how do you handle pistols? The first time you shun a kid from away from playing with guns is the first time that they go to the pistol. We know that in real life. You tell a kid don't do something, they're more prone to going to do that. So when we educate them on what they should be doing and how they should be doing it, why is it a crime now for black people to teach young black people how to work a pistol? But you don't find it a problem when you got Ording and Puyallup and Graham and Roy. You know, they teaching these kids how to shoot assault rifles, how to put them together, break them down, clean the bullets, and build guns on their own. You know, but that's not an issue with that. And so I'm not here to promote teaching young people how to manage these pistols so they can go and put in work. But like my brother said earlier in the Zoom, if you educate our young people on what these things are capable of doing and the power of them, then it'll make them less prone to being curious or intrigued on what could happen if I do this. You know what would happen if you do this. I've seen in the country, like one thing that helped me become subtle mind is like, you know, watching my old heads, my elders, you know, go out there and shoot meat, you know. They'll have a rack of caliber and they'll just shoot meat, you know, and I get a chance to see what it does to the meat, you know, and I'm like, oh. And me being me, now that I know more, I do differently. And so, you know, structuring the community is me as an ex-banger. I don't have to go around representing the GD. I don't have to go around representing folks. I go around as myself playing basketball, socializing, and networking with people in the community. It's only until they see me with a short sleeve shirt on and see that big old 6-point star on my arm that they be like, oh, he from folks. But by now, we done built the relationships of credibility amongst ourselves, and now we understand and respect each other just off of the normal socialization. So when brothers like myself, along with other rivals from different hoods, can start to congregate amongst ourselves, and we start to have parties, and we start to have barbecues with red, black, and blue, you know, if it's all Crips, if it's all Bloods, if it's all gangsters, then we in the space promoting this healthy relationship, then this generation will start to look at it from a different perspective to say, well, damn, is this what we're supposed to be doing? Yeah. Yes, this is what we're supposed to be doing.
I gotta follow up after the Church of Threat because it's always great. I got my offering ready. I don't know about y'all. Right, but I think listening to both of them too, right? There's this overarching thing that I'm also seeing too and thinking, again, right, it's still that importance of like, right, investments or that input versus outcome. And I'm also listening to both of them, right? There's also this piece of me that believes in the upstream approach. And for too long in this country, we've made laws and we've made policy and we've reacted to everything. So when we see X, Y, and Z happening into these communities, right, instead of saying, oh, well, like what happened up here to make it seem like a problem, we just decide to be reactionary and pass this law, pass this policy, and enforce X, Y, and Z. And I think there is a space, right, education, resources that we believe at our organization too, right, this culture of, right, you're going to have guns, right, gun ownership that balances rights with responsibilities, right, and so being able to be taught properly with what you're holding, right, that comes with a lot of responsibility because of what it can do to other lives and your life included, and right, and then there's also still that upstream approach too, right, that's precautionary, right, having that education to make sure that young Black men are aware of what they're holding, what that responsibility means when you're holding something like that, right? But then to also still give those other avenues as well to continue to be precautionary of making sure that you've also got other resources and other places to tap into in your life. And I just wanted to add that to the Church of Threat.
I want to know what he think. I want to know what you think about that. The same question.
Yeah, so, like I said, young Black men ages 0 to 17 are 13 times more likely to experience excessive or deadly force. So I guess just ask simply, do you feel safe in your city?
I'll be honest with yourself, bro.
I mean, yeah, I feel safe in my city, kind of. Yeah. I mean, like, ask the question again.
No, so do you feel safe in your city? And then kind of an add-on to that, do you feel safe around the police in the city? That's a good question. I didn't ask the question right the first time.
So do I feel safe around the police? I mean, I don't discriminate like between black and white, you know, because I came across some good cops and some bad cops. So it's like, I mean, yeah, I would say I feel safe around police. I've never personally had like a problem with police, you know, because I don't act crazy when the police pull up and, you know, do stupid stuff, etc. But yeah, I feel pretty safe around the police.
Right, well, and we're kind of moving into this forward-looking, because if any of you know Carol Mitchell, we're always worried about solutions and solving the problems, right? So we're going to start thinking more forward-thinking. So, question, we'll start right here with Brendan. If you were made king or mayor for a day, what is an immediate or long-term solution you'd implement to reduce gun violence?
Pass that to Church Threat. I don't got the question, you have to come back to me.
Okay, answer the. I need to hear it again.
Yep. So if you were made king or mayor for a day, what is an immediate or long-term solution you'd implement to reduce gun violence in our community?
I would address the concepts of. I'm gonna go right back to poverty pimping, right? Honestly, man, the moment that citizens, especially our elders and our taxpayers, the moment that we realize that the crime that we have in these black communities is a big business, you know. The crime that we have in the black community is no different than the prison system. You know, that system was set up because it's very profitable. It provides jobs and work to people. The same crime that we have in our black communities, it provides jobs, employment to people, right? And so to reduce the gun violence, I feel like if you start to put more younger adults into powerful positions to be able to oversee their sales, because what do we get? We make money because of the gun violence of young people, right? And if it wasn't for young people being in criminal situations, then there wouldn't be no money on the table. Why is it that a city, not just Tacoma, because I don't beat up on Tacoma, it's cities across the nation. Why is it that these people are generating millions of dollars? Because of youth violence, gun violence, kids is problematic, issues with young people, violence and vandalism and things of that nature. That's the reason why there's a shitload of money out here. And so if you started to invest into the younger generations, then you can reduce that bigger problem. But the bigger problem to invest into the younger generation than the people who's profiting now becomes the people that are outed on opportunities and jobs. So that's why those are the powers that be in the positions, they can't afford to invest into that next generation, literally. I'm not just talking about investing into the next generation, hypothetically, or let's just sit you at a table and you fill out these forms and let me see how you think differently. I'm talking about if there's a problem with gang violence of young people, key factors within the black community. There's a young person or few young people on the hilltop. There's a few young people in Tillicum. There's a few young brothers in Lakewood. There's a few young brothers on the east side. How do we pull those people together and collectively invest into them? You can't sit me up here as an aged out adult and say that Tacoma's generated $10 million for youth violence, right? And then now I got a piece of the pie because I'm older. I get a piece of that $10 million because I'm overseeing young people. I watch them and I work with them on a regular basis. What I'm saying is that if you pull those key factors, these are young brothers that are very charismatic. They're very smart. They're highly intelligent. That's why he just said in the thing, the police said it. Well, they say that they're stupid, but they know how to manage money, they know how many quarters in a gram, they know how many ounces in a pound. They know how to do all of those things, but nobody's challenging them enough to put them in a position of structured power within the community. The reason why they can't afford to do that is because when you reduce the problems, you reduce the source of income. You know, these people are like buzzers in all communities. So as a mayor or a king of the community, I would empower those that we feel that are problematic, you know, and like a buzzard or a vulture. A buzzard or a vulture don't benefit unless it's dying or it's dead, right? So this city don't make money unless our kids are dying or they're dead. And the more worse are their scenarios and circumstances, the more money we generate. So I would enforce empowerment. I wouldn't be paying these older people. Now, I'm talking about in general. Just because you're a scholar, you're 40-something years old, and you got your bachelor's, you got your doctor's, you got your master's, I'm not going to put you in a position of empowerment financially when I can get a young brother like so and say, look, this is what the requirements are. Can you manage this task? And if they can produce and prove that they can, then I'd rather give $10 million to 15 of the most highly qualified young brothers in the community and give them the power to do something different.
Mayor threat.
Y'all better cut it out, man.
I'm an organizer. We'll start tomorrow.
We will.
Yeah, Jermaine, did you have anything? King or mayor for a day?
It's always hard to follow. Because I've said everything that I would say. I think if anything, right, to, I guess add to that, if I could be king or mayor, it would be a nice ring to be King Tremaine. I would budget rise. That is a thing, right? Money in this country, capitalism. I would immediately, as I keep talking about this upstream approach, right? Not just talking about it, but immediately changing the budget and everything that has been funded that is reactionary, I would move it upstream to precautionary and then watch what happens from there, right? Because at the same time, you know, I agree with everything you're saying about the budgets and whatnot, right? But I'd be curious to see, right, adding all that money upstream, adding all that money to precautionary things, what innovative things would then grow from there, and what jobs that also creates, and what solutions that continues to build for our communities and for our country. So immediately day one would switch everything that is a reactionary policy that is funded and move it upstream and from the top.
Brendan, do you have anything that you want to add? Do you think education's key? What's
No, I think they pretty much summed it all up. I mean, pretty much what they had said. I'll probably would say the same thing. It's about investing into the youth, and like Brett and Jermaine said, I mean that should be our focus.
Hold on. I gotta know what my brother do. I gotta know, man. I have to know.
If I was mayor,
Or king for a day, bro.
yeah, King Keandre?
24 hours, every second, every minute. I mean, I don't even, like, does it have to do with like?
Man, how do you want it, bro?
It could be anything.
You're
However you want it. Can I ask something to that? The reason your response is so powerful, bro, is because this is the reason why young brothers will make, not to say, but irrational decisions on certain things impulsive. Because they've never been challenged with an opportunity of what would you do? You would only find out if you went to prison. Now, if you went to the penitentiary, you would sit down for a minute and you would get to thinking like, okay, boom. You realize you're the best gardener in the world, so you put garden plants around the whole city of Tacoma, or you great with happiness. So that's why it's important. And your honest answer on that, it's not wrong, it's not bad, bro. It's the fact that this is the reality that we're dealing with. A lot of our adults don't know what they want to do. You get what I'm saying? So it's understandable that a young man is trying to figure it out. And so that's why brothers like So is in a position to say, what do you want to do? If you could do anything that you had the power to do, what would that look like? And then we help you unpack that shit. You can say we help you build it out, and we reach out to resources because there's a lot of people in here that can get around that. You know, you're not a boss, and if you don't find ground, then you will be like they said, a paper bag in the wind. Paper bag in the wind. You'll float everywhere, and we just want to make sure that brothers like, because you're powerful, bro. You're sitting on this panel, and I like to not sit next to nothing but power, so you're powerful.
Yeah, no, I Last summer, we had the Freedom Summer Symposium with IBJ, and we were asked, a very similar question. If you could solve anything, what would you do? And Malik was there, and Keisha was there, and we had the same reaction, like, we can dream big in Tacoma, like, because we're taught that we can't in a lot of spaces. And so, yeah, and just to kind of come in for a landing here, this last question, if you could share one piece of advice with a young Black king, so someone like Keandre, what would you say? I'll start with you, Tremaine.
Say it one more time so I can gather my thoughts. Say it nice and slow.
If you could share one piece of wisdom with a young Black king, what would you say?
I guess, especially following today, right? Knowing the power of your voice, right? I think that is even more clear now in this new position that I'm holding, and the power of organizing and what our voices do. I think it is important for our youth to really know the importance of their power, because as I tell those youth that I work with, you will also inherit this mess of a country. And so the sooner we get you involved, and the sooner you know your power and your voice, the sooner we can hand it over. I am ready and willing when the time comes to hand it over and get out of the way. And I think that is important for even those that are older than us, right? To know at some point that you need to step aside and help those that are younger and empower them to know their voice. And that when you know what you want to do, my job at that point is to help you get there. And then once you get it, I'm out of the way. I'm happy to retire early if I can.
Awesome. What about you, Brendan?
I would tell the king or queen, dream big. No matter, whatever you're going through as a young age, you have your whole life ahead of you. And become whatever you want to become, but strive for it and work hard for it, because nothing's given to you. So, that's exactly what I would say.
I'm gonna tell you this, man. Everything that my brothers just said a few minutes ago is 100% true, right? I talked to my partners. I talked to these two brothers in the front right here. And there's a few more that we rocks out.
The long way.
But when we talk about this business, though, what is the business about, bro?
Empower young people.
Man, all praise and glory to the Most High. I'm always about my Father's business, right? If you're not knowing who the Most High is, if you don't know who God is, bro, you're gonna lose. This has nothing to do with physical technicalities on any of this. This shit is deeper than just physical world problems. If you can't find your soul, if you can't find your spiritual perspectives, if you can't find a world outside of this place that we living in, then you're gonna lose all the time. The reason why we struggle in this world that we living in is because we don't have a clear sense on what's bigger than this world, right? I've learned a long time ago that it's not about where we're at, it's about where we're gonna go. And I know exactly where I'm going when I'm done here. So since I know where I'm going when I leave here, it's important that young brothers like yourself, somebody killed the mic. So I'm gonna just end it on this note, man. Find a relationship with the Most High, bro. I don't care how you do it. They go to Mike, they're killing the mic. Hey, find him, bro. That's all I'm gonna say. Find him.
Ken, if you want to finish this off, let's rephrase the question. If you could share one piece of advice with people in this room, what do they not know? What do we need to know to help you succeed?
Or to be humble. You could talk to the older people like they're talking to you.
Sorry, say it one more time.
Yeah, what don't we know? What do you need people in this room to know for you to be successful? Your turn, it's a great question. Yeah. If you could say one thing to any of us, what would it be? What do you need to be successful?
Okay, boom, here go a phase, right? Because you imagine a better life for yourself? Could you picture that? So if you can picture that at this particular time, what would it take, a start step? What would it take for you to get closer and closer to that vision of yourself that you can see? Because if you got the picture that you see, what would be the first step that could take place right now? We're gonna build a relationship. That's what it is. You know what I'm saying? There's no right or wrong answer, bro. If it's support, what is it? If it's resources, communication, meet up, shaking hands, eating pizza, I don't know what it is.
Support? Support,
right? Right. Hell yeah. Yeah. Heck yeah. I need support.
Yeah, I need a lot of support.
Sorry, bro.
Yeah, I need a lot of support from you guys.
And that's what we're here for. That's exactly what we're here for. And it looks like the Church of Threat got a new member today.
Offering is accepted at the end. I'm ready.
All right, guys, we want to engage community comments for our lovely panel for the next 10, 15 minutes while we have you. So how we're going to do this is, it looks like we got a little bit of space. Maybe Monique and I, we can walk around. If you guys have a question, just raise your hand. We'll come to you with the mic, and you guys can ask our lovely panel. Any hands? Any hands?
I want to say something to my big homie right there. But when I first sat down, when I first sat down with Threat, I was 16 years old. My mom got evicted. She raised 6 kids by herself. I told Threat, I was like, if you never give up on me, I'm never gonna give up on myself. And he said, I'm with you the long way. So he asked me, what do you want to do? I said, I want to start a business. He said, what is it about? I said, I want to start a business where young people can show their gifts and their talents at a young age. And I predominantly want the ones that have been told that they're not good enough, that got booed, tomatoes thrown at them on stage, the whole 9 yards. But the thing I want to say to you, bro, is I was 16. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was 16, following the big homies the same way you is. So it's okay not to know. But the thing that makes you the most powerful is the simple fact that you show up to the table every day, willing to learn something new and willing to do something different. You feel what I'm saying? And we gonna recruit you. We got our own little nonprofits too. It's called TGW. It's about youth outreach. And just like this facility, I don't really see too many youth. And I love the people that's here. But it takes young people like us to show up to places like this and not look at it like, oh, we're going to church again. Because I went to church every single day. My mom had me Bible study, choir rehearsal. I couldn't sing, all types of stuff. You feel what I'm saying? And it takes a young person like us with the support of y'all to say, okay, we got this group of kids, come speak to them. And we gonna make everything that we doing look good. We gonna have J's on because we love the Jordans. We gonna have Air Forces on because we love the Air Force. We might have a chain or two because that's what they love. I got a diamond earring in right now. You feel what I'm saying? So that's our connection to everybody. Just like you said, you need support, I got you. Regardless if I pull up on you, I just got enough gas until my gas tank goes to E, we gonna sleep in the car tonight, camp it out. We gonna do what it takes to get you to where you need to be. Because I hear you. I really do, bro. I hear you. I've been slept on just like people have slept on you. So I'm letting you know right now, if you show up to the table every single day, you gonna make a change that's worldwide, period.
Malik, this question's for you and the young man up there. How we get you here? How we get you guys here? Can I challenge you to get everybody here?
Yeah,
That's old folks?
Yeah.
But we need y'all.
Yeah.
So get them here.
I got you.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Yep. Well, we gotta answer it again.
To get me here, I'm gonna stand up again. But the thing that got me here was, we got something that, man, this is just crazy, but we got a bowling match we got on Sunday. You know, But you know, we got a bowling match that's going down, and I've been rocking with Carol for the longest because she allowed me to perform. And I feel like for me, you got to make it something that's new generation. You got to make it something that's new era, something that's nowadays like modern. Don't make it so like y'all gonna do what y'all want to do, and that's what young people are here for, to give you that little twist of new school. But like, you gotta include things that the kids want to do. Like, don't just make it talking and preaching and talking his head off. Make it, let's go play basketball while I talk to you. Make it, let's go go-karting. Make it bowling. Make it something that they like doing, you know? So yeah.
Voting is happening.
Like you said, tell the lane.
Go ahead.
Hey. So my name is Shatara. And I actually grew up on the. How Yeah. Okay. So my name is Shatara, and I actually grew up on the hilltop. I was born in St. Joseph in the 90s, and when I came home from the hospital, we lived above grounds. And my mom was the bartender, so I saw a lot of people that are. I mean, it was hard to not cry, because I'm like, dang, I remember him, I remember her, and oh, she's like just blowing my mind. And a couple of you guys talked about 2-parent households, and now we live in a generation, and you're growing up in the prime time of a generation where being promiscuous as a young male or even as a male is glorified. And so because it's glorified, you run into a lot of single parent households. I'm one of those single parent households. And I'm in school pursuing my degree at Evergreen State College, Chicago. I own 2 businesses. I own an online beauty business, and I'm a nail technician and so forth. But my question to you as a young male, and I'm so sorry, but I can't remember your name.
Dre.
Okay, Dre. You're finding yourself amongst power. And in this, you're learning about being a young man. So when you present yourself to younger women in your generation, and hopefully you stay in your generation. But as a young man, and you're seeing what can happen for young men in the future, do you come from a single parent household?
Yes.
Okay. And what are you witnessing for your mom in regards to raising you? And do you think that it's difficult for her as a mother raising a younger Black man? So go ahead. I'm giving you one at a time.
Oh yeah, for sure. It was definitely hard for her. You know, it was 4 of us, well, really 5 of us, including my cousin. So yeah, it was definitely hard for her. And she definitely told me when I was younger that growing up I was going to run into some problems because of the color of my skin. So yeah, it was definitely difficult.
And so in the future, what do you think you can do now to prevent another situation like you came from?
Can you repeat that?
Really, that's a heavy question, and even grown men would have a good time answering that, because I would love for a couple of you guys to answer that question too. But the reason why I want to start with you is because you're growing up in it now.
Right.
You know, I came from, y'all, you know, I'll say this, and I'll say it proudly, cocaine money raised me. It raised me, and I mean, it also took over my family. So, and we're talking about single women. So I'm the oldest of 6 kids. And I know that my younger brother is looking at me, he's like, well, you grew up, your mom was a thug. Yeah, but she's a spirit now, and that's great. So my question is what can you do now to prevent this happening in your future, for your future kids?
I would say I would say
So basically, how would you prevent a single parent home, right?
Yes.
How would you prevent yourself? How would you prevent a single family from your perspective, right? What could you do to prevent creating the same situation as your family? Being a mother raising you, how do you prevent that from happening in the future?
Okay, well, let me back it up a little bit. So, what do you need? What is it that you could have done to aid your mom in successfully raising you? How about that? Like, for instance, there's lots of young girls that are also in gang violence. My mom was one of them. She was a gang member. And I was texting her while I'm here, and I'm like, oh, she's like, no, for me it was the rolling 60s. For me it was, that's what she's talking about to me. But for you, like getting in trouble, I don't know your life, so I'm not judging, but like getting in trouble or getting involved in gang violence, Brett was talking about being 16 snorting coke. What? And that's a real thing. And even now, because now you guys want to smoke pills. No, for real, they do. So, really, like, I'll give you an example. For me, I knew that I didn't want to grow up and sell cocaine like my mom did. So now, I sell lashes. I do, I do all different things. And she likes to say I went the legal way. But I knew I didn't want to have my daughter getting letters from her grandma from prison. I didn't want to have letters from my mom at county. I don't want my daughter to have those types of experiences. So I said, all right, instead of doing it this way, I want to navigate it the way that will take me away from hurting. But, I was taking myself away from that direction. So what can you do to get yourself away from whatever it is that you don't want to be like? Your mom is doing nothing wrong. But I am saying that there's a greater path, and it takes a little bit more. So as a young guy, because I'm really lengthy, I'm sorry. But as a younger guy, what is it now that you could lay at the altar? That you could lay down and be like, you know what, this isn't conducive. This isn't working for my life, the trajectory that I want to take it. Like, go ahead.
I mean, right now, I personally feel like I'm doing like the greatest I've ever been. Like,
Okay.
That's why I couldn't really answer the question, because it's like, I feel like I'm doing the best I can right now. I'm doing great. I just got off probation. I got straight A's in school. There we go. I feel like if I continue to do what I'm doing,
That's right.
I won't repeat that cycle in the
We got some more hands. I got a stretch to the back. Monique, we got one in the front. You want to take that one?
Well, I just want to, I don't know exactly how I'm going to word this, if it's a question, but I really think it's a statement. And what I like is the young brother that looks to the older brother. Every question he was asked, he looked to the older brother for the help in how he should respond. I like that. But what I don't like that I heard is, let's kind of kick the old folk out the way. See, don't kick me out the way. Because I can tell you, don't do it the way I did it, because you're going to end up the way I ended up. Okay? Don't kick us out the way. We got something that we can tell you if you do what you said, which is to listen and keep doing it the right way.
Hello, Kings. Thank you so much for being here tonight. This is amazing. My name is Tisha Marie, and I had a question for all of you up here. As the founder of Legally Black, we focus a lot on implementing tangible changes in our local government and state government. So my question is, as a Black woman, I see a lot of other Black women, a lot of white women in this fight for change. What can we do to get Black men to be in the forefront and fight for these changes?
So one of the most important things that I've realized is there's a major divide, and it's not to get technical with the movements and the feminist movement and all these different brackets, because there's been plenty of times that I've been available to aid and assist, but every time I say I'm here to support, then one of the first things to come, what do you think, we need your support?
Yes.
You think just because we women, we need you to, so I'm like, okay, I'm in a position then to say, okay, well, what is there left for me to do? I've always prided myself on, especially with the organization that we've been running since 2012, one of the first things that come to our mind is, whatever she say, we support that to the max. And we still stand on that. So if there's any issues that are going wrong with Black women or women in general in community, then let us know what those issues are, because however you can utilize us, then we are here to be utilized in that way. And it doesn't matter to what extreme, if it's for your safety, if it's for your security, if it's for your advancement, and if it's for your protection, then allow us to do that, because one of my scenarios is that I understand the equality construct of everything, but if we was both living in the same household and somebody broke the window downstairs, equality would say, I can sit in the bed while you go downstairs and check it out, right? But a reality sense make me say that if something breaks downstairs and I go downstairs to check it out, and if whatever it is can get past me, then it got to deal with you. And whatever that is deal with you, then it has to deal with our children. So if we raise them enough to where if it passes both of us, and they know exactly what they're supposed to do. So in that fight, let me know what I'm supposed to do. Write it down on a piece of paper and I'll tell you.
Thank you. Just a follow-up, if you guys don't mind, unless anyone else had any feedback.
No, he doesn't, this is a follow-up question. Go ahead, Jermaine, I look like you had 2 words almost.
You do.
It might be 2. It might just be 2. It might be 2. No, I think I would add on to that too, right? I think taking it even deeper, right, is looking where many of our Black and brown men are, right? And we look at the criminal justice system, right, organizing to get them out of there first, and then continuing the fight to support them. And now that I would add to that too, is looking where they are now and addressing why they're there, getting them out of there, and then, right, really doing that due diligence of rehabilitative process for the restorative justice to be able to have them on the front lines fighting in these communities. I would add that. I guess that wasn't 2 words, but get it.
And I just wanted to add this. Please know that this is not a condemnation of lack of Black men. This is a question: what can we do to get your buy-in so you can be more present and have that platform? One of the things we like to say is we greet everybody as kings, queens, and royalty, because we see you beyond the labels that you have been given. We see you for your power. We see you for your integrity. We see you for your aggression and that power that you have within that. And we need that. So I'm here to tell you, I'm not looking for equality. I'm looking for equity. And what you can do, I can't do. And what I can't do, you can't. So we want to make sure that we're balancing each other out. So please, whatever you think we need to do to get more Black men in this fight, let us know so we can cater to you.
Actually, a fun fact before I get to my question. My name is actually Kimani. Kimani Carter was actually my dad's best friend, and they actually named me after him after he got all that time. So, I talk to Kimani all the time. I was actually just out of combat about 2 years ago before he got transferred, for the food strike. It's just crazy that I'm here and seeing him on the screen, seeing him 2 years ago in that situation, us being locked up together, and him telling me before I even went there not to go there, to change my lifestyle. And I'm still trying to change my lifestyle. I'm still trying to do that. But my question is, shelter. you think that if a lot of kids weren't sheltered the way they are, like, you know, being forced to go to church, you know, like that was my problem. You know, I was forced to go to church, you know, that was the lifestyle that I was, you know, growing up to, you know, being adopted and all the case may be. But it made me kind of like go out and try to do other things, you know, like I'm being forced to go to church, you know, like I couldn't go to my friend's house every night. I couldn't be trusted to go to this place, that place. So I kind of got like, I kind of started, you know, running away to go do those things. So like, if people weren't so like structured, like, you know, parents weren't so structured, like, you know, so strict on their kids, do you think there would be a better outcome on like how kids would move around the streets and finding programs to get into, wanting to be in those programs, you know what I'm saying? Like, does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
I grew up in the South, in Virginia, very much back roads kind of area where if the doors of the church were open, I was in church. My uncle was also the pastor of the church. The pastor of the church, my uncle, and my godfather. I was some days at church on Sunday from 9 a.m. to like 5 o'clock in the evening. I'd be at church sometimes doing my homework on a school night. So you were always in church, right? I think there is a space for that conversation, and I think, even in my household, right, when my mother later in life started going back to church, right, and she kind of, went to that, as you said, became a square, and continued to put me in church all the time. But as I got a little bit older, I will give her that credit, right, that she kind of started loosening up some of what she did as a parent, because that's what she was taught that was the best way, and really understanding that I was a different individual and working together with me to see, right, wanting to give that foundation of faith and that belief system and the importance of that, but also kind of giving me that space and that flexibility to kind of also thrive into different areas. I was a theater kid, I was a theater nerd, I love theater, so she made sure that I had those other avenues. So I think I would say, I guess around your conversation, shelter, right, that is an important thing too, right, because as I got older, as a teenager, right, I had those quiet moments where I did go wild and I was drinking underage and doing all these fun things. My mother never knew about it because I also got really good at loopholes, right? And so once she found out about that, there was this deeper conversation of, okay, well, something has to change here because I don't want to be so hard on you that when you get out of this household and from under my care, you go completely left of everything that I taught you. Mm-hmm. So I think there is an important place there to have with parents, and parents to be open to having those conversations with their children, that they are young, as they grow up, they are going to be young adults, and there is a place that we can have compromise where it is important to give your children a fundamental, right, a foundation, so that they grow up to be good people, right, and treat other people kindly and go to dream, but to also give them that space to dream and to be creative and whatever that space is for them, right, to support them in that. So I guess I would respond with that kind of piece there too, because I think if you don't and you really kind of put your child in that box, which is how I grew up. I did have a moment a couple of years, right, where I completely went left field and went wild because I never had the ability to do so. So when I got the first taste of freedom as an adult, I went buck wild. And then as I got older, I was like, oh, okay. And then, right, even the simplest things of just going out and spending money and ruining my credit score and having to later in life build it all back up. And it's like, man, if somebody had just helped me a little bit earlier, right? And she did the best that she could. But I think there's those pieces there that most certainly, as we got older, she started to kind of loosen up and give me some of that space. So I would agree to that you most certainly should kind of get that middle ground for your children to also grow and to thrive as well. So yeah.
I have a question, and then we're probably gonna, I see one other hand, so two last questions. My question is, how do we build the positive identity formation of Black men so that when we're, and women, right? So that when we look at each other, that's my sister, that's my brother. I'm not gonna go kill this person, not to say I'm gonna go and kill somebody else, right? We don't wanna entice or, encourage violence. But how do we build this cultural respect? I mean, when we look at other cultures, Koreans stick to each other, the Chinese stick to each other, Vietnamese, there's 20 of them up in a nail shop working together. So how do we do that within our community? That's the internal fight. I want to know. I want to hear from the youngest and the oldest on the panel, and I'll boil it down for the youngest. How do we look at each other and see that as my brother, even if you don't know his name, you don't know what he looks, you never seen him, heard, know anything about him? How can I build that respect for somebody that looks just like us? Yep, go for it. Whoever wants to.
No.
Okay.
I'm gonna go ahead and go first. Very nice for you there, real quick. One of my biggest things is I would say ban rap music. I'm just throwing it out there. Ban rap music.
Oh, bad.
Straight up. The reason why I say this is because one of the biggest things that we as Black people fail to realize is that there's a bigger construct that's going on versus our day-to-day living life. Psychological warfare is a thing that science understands, right? And a lot of times we'll blow it off, oh, threat, you tripping. But that's what people want you to do when they're dealing with psychological warfare.
Yep.
When you don't understand the fundamentals of what frequency is, we hear it all the time in the Black community. Increase your frequency, elevate your vibration. But people fail to realize that what a megahertz is, you talk about sound and vibrations. When you can hear a certain melody, it'll make you feel some kind of way, right? We don't have to hear the lyrics, we just hear the vibration. And that vibration does something to us physically. When you increase that with drugs, that does something to it more standard. And that's why I got 4 elements. When you got guns, drugs, sound, and words, we say it all the time. Words are powerful. Watch what you say. Positive words of affirmation. Say this to yourself every single day when you wake up in the morning or before you go to bed. Why is it that we say these things, but when I bring something like rap music, people be like, oh, it can't be rap music. But failing to realize that before I went in, well, let me rephrase. Before people put themselves in a position to shoot up a car, shoot up a house, the first thing that we did was get high. Well, the first thing Look, the first thing that people did was get high, intoxicated, and put their favorite negative music on. We get so riled up to the point to where we feel the music and we feel the words. And now I'm thinking about murdering, I'm thinking about killing, and I'm thinking about doing all these things. And next thing you know, we sitting in the car with the music blasting high as hell. There's music that infused us to feel a certain kind of way. We're looking at young people in the streets right now. Back in my era, we talk about straps and burners. Now you're hearing sticks and blickies. This doesn't come from a space of we just want to do this. This is promoted through music. This is promoted through the culture that we live. I don't see Asian people talk about smoking and killing each other. I don't see the Russian community talk about, they don't glamorize themselves like that on television or through sitcoms or through movies and things. We glorify this stuff through music. I challenge everybody to go and check out a documentary, and it's called The Meeting That Changed Hip Hop. Rap music is a psychological warfare that's used by the government. It's the same way that drugs was infused to the Black community, guns was pushed into the Black community, rap music was pushed. Rap music is not hip hop. Hip hop was a sense of Black power, raise the people. We on a level of enlightenment and loving each other. Gangsta rap is about murder, kill, to hell with bitches, and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's keeping us divided. And so when we look at each other, we enact with each other according to how we produce. Repetitive. That's the narrative of people. And so I feel like if we change that, and we promote it a lot of the times, you know, I like that song, but you better realize that to a young man who's high off of drugs and liquor, that song does something differently to him than what it does to you on your mature brain. It motivates him to become that what he listened to. We now old enough to listen to it as entertainment. But a younger generation, that's their realities, and so they want to be like what they hear about in music videos and music. So they portray that, and we condone it. The moment that we stop condoning it, because those people aren't just rapping, they're being paid to say those things, you know? So that's my spiel.
Is it okay if I pass on this question?
Absolutely.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Okay, so this is my last question. Get out your way. So my question, just in general, for all of the Black young men, since you don't want to be old.
Thank you.
Okay. You're welcome. So I ask a lot about the perspective from a single mother because my son doesn't have a relationship with his dad, and I want to know how I don't even know the word I'm trying to use because raising a Black son is just like, it's powerful, but it's so concerning. It's scary. And so I want to know what I, as a Black mom, can do to promote healthy mental health for my son, emotional health, because I know a lot of Black men don't feel hurt. So my question to you all is, what would your advice be for just in general on promoting healthy mental health in Black men? Because Brett's right, music is, because gospel music takes you to another place, country music takes you to another place, all of it. So, go ahead,
Yeah, I would say I guess first, right, I appreciate you mentioning mental health for Black men. I think that that's really important that you mentioned because it is important. I think, I guess, living in my experiences, right, of somebody who was raised by a single mother, my father was incarcerated most of my life, so there was not much of a connection there. My mother did her best to put other positive figures around, right, while my father was not there, right. I had my grandfather, I had my uncles, I had my cousins, right, my older cousins who I would always hang out with. So I think that was one of the first things that she really did is in the absence of that, she had alternatives, and it was making sure that she always put me around those other figures. I would also say the importance of mental health is important because I didn't have that growing up, dealing with that issue, right? And I grew up in a predominantly white neighborhood, and I grew up pretty much very teetering on the line of poverty, right? So there was all these multiple things. And then also being young, that people don't talk about, is hard. I think sometimes we diminish what young people go through, right? I remember growing up, like, what do you have, like, you young, right? But we also have feelings, we also have thoughts, we also have hardship, bullying, and all these things that happen in school, right? And I didn't have mental health, and I think that was something that would also have been great because I struggled with depression up until my early 20s until I realized the importance of going myself and speaking with a therapist. I do it weekly, and I'm proud about it, and I have a good time with my therapist. And I support other people doing it, so I think you mentioned those two things are really important, right? I would say giving them those other spaces and people to be with, and I think mental health is most certainly important because, right, being a young Black man, being a Black man is scary in this world, but also being a mother of a Black man is just as scary, right? Because you never know when they may or may not come home. And I think that just as much as taking care of us, it's important to take care of yourselves. But yeah, I think I would just add those two things, that it really is important to have mental health because not only that, right, but as youth and as just young Black men as a whole, Black men as a whole, right, watching what is happening on the news, that also weighs effects on you all the time to see that constantly. And right now, I don't know about everybody else, right, but having that thing that also happens sometimes in Black and brown communities that most don't, my white friends cannot agree, right, is you all got the talk. And I remember getting the talk with my uncle, right, the absence of my father with 4 of us and telling us what we could and could not do in America and not understanding it yet. And then as I got older, it was like, oh, okay, I'm seeing it now. So I would most certainly say giving those different areas for father figures, but also most certainly the importance of mental health and encouraging that, as you mentioned earlier, right, like masculinity, toxic masculinity, and what that does to the mental health of someone too. So yeah.
I agree with everything Strange just said. That's like spot on, honestly, 100%. And the thing that I would add to that would be hypocrisy is a real thing, right? I run into a lot of families, and shout outs to Mona, Baghdadi. I appreciate you, Mona, because Mona actually gave me my first opportunity to work legitimately in the systems with families. So in like 4 years of my work, I've been working with over 400, 500 family members. You know, and so through that process, I hear a lot of the parents ask the same thing. When my son is this age and he's drinking and he's smoking, one of my most crucial questions to that parent that I actually don't like to hear is like, do you drink? And most parents say, yeah. When did you start drinking? Same age. And then I say, so when did you stop? They didn't stop, you know? So how is it that we want so much for our kids is just cut cold turkey when you've never stopped it? So now we're basing what we want from them off of our lived experiences. So what it makes me challenge a parent would say, do you feel like you're less intelligent or you're less smarter because you're older now than your child if they just stop? And so that is a crucial situation. So I believe being honest and transparent with a young person, understanding, like you just said, Tremaine, is we forget real fast what it was like to be a teenager or to be young. We say if a young person walk up to you and they have their first breakup and they all over the place emotionally, we'll say, get over it. I don't have this many, but we're judging it off of our lived experiences, and we forget that this is their first time experiencing these scenarios and do have the right role models or male figures. And one of the biggest things that I've always shared with parents, especially mothers are very protective of their children. So if I'm working with a mother's child, the first thing that I would say is that in order for me to have an effective relationship with your child, you can't keep intervening. And you can't keep jumping your 2 cents in there when I'm trying to build a relationship with the young man. Allow us to do what we do, and then we'll get a better understanding. And the more that happens, then the better grounds that we get for that younger person. So, you know, and ACEs, do the ACEs, because it works. Emerging childhood experience is a real thing.
Thank you, guys. And we're gonna have to wrap up today's evening. Please give a louder round of applause for our panel of kings. Come on now. They all took time out of their day. They could have been at home on the video games and whatever.